All right. Good morning, Wyoming. Joseph Kibler here. So great to have you here. I am live streaming this morning from Laramie in the talk shop with Eric. So super excited to be here today. Going to answer questions that Eric and his audience have on KOCA 93.5 FM here in Laramie. So really excited to be here. And with that, Eric, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Good morning, everybody. Joseph Kibler, our candidate for governor in the state of Wyoming 2026 race. Today's guest on the Talk Shop. The Talk Shop brought to you from Studio 255 in the Laramie Plains Civic Center. Compliments of Together We Can, that event featuring Lieutenant Colonel Alan West on April 11th in historic downtown Laramie's Elks Lodge. 582. That'll be an engagement starting at 6 p.m. You can get your tickets direct from the Talk Shop. As we look forward to an upcoming interview with candidate Kibler, we want you to feel welcome to interject your questions. Our phone number 307-460-3087. And the Talk Shop line also available by text. If you have that already in line, we have a number of participants from our audience who have provided us with questions of candidate Joseph Kibler, Wyoming governor to be. He'd like to be.
That's right. That's right. That's right,
hey,
Eric.
Now, so how about an introduction of yourself for those in our audience who might not be familiar with Joseph Kibler?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Eric, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm Joseph Kibler, 45 years old. I live just north of Cheyenne with my wife and 3 beautiful children. We came to Wyoming because of the Wyoming values. My wife's family are Cheyenne, Wyoming natives. And we're just really glad to be here. A little bit about myself, a professional background, business owner, firefighter for about 20 years. And just really, I guess you could say, Eric, this isn't something you do overnight, right? You don't wake up one day and go, "Oh, I have a great idea. I'm going to leave my quiet life, my little ranch just north of Cheyenne, with my wife and kids, and run for governor." It's not something that you just wake up and do. This is something I think that has been deep in my heart for a long time.
I have to say that November 6th seems just yesterday.
It does.
And 2024's campaign coming to general election November 6th was pretty powerful year in terms of the Candidate Awareness Tour 2024. Now we already start the Candidate Awareness Tour for 2026. So if you are interested in the history of this program, the Talk Shop in 2022 started a Candidate Awareness Tour 2022. Hashtag, you'll see all of those interviews that happened in 2022. And then in 2024, we did it again. We doubled the following, we doubled the impact, and hopefully invitations go out to every candidate. This is a program that's wide open. There's no charge for this for any candidate. So you have to ask yourself, if a candidate does not accept the invitation, why not? And I appreciate that you have accepted the invitation. Is the moment we were aware that your candidacy was announced, we got a hold of you, and we had prompt reply from you at the Talk Shop. So thank you for that and that responsiveness.
Ready to rock and roll, Eric, because especially with your grassroots, you got to start somewhere, and I appreciate the opportunity to start somewhere, Eric. With you and here at the Talk Shop. So it's awesome.
So we talked about who you are. Mm-hmm. What goals do you have for your campaign for Wyoming State Governor?
That's a great question. So here in 2025, my real goal is for people to get to know me. One-on-one basis. I'm going to walk around. I'm going to shake hands. I'm going to meet people. I think my long-term goal, if I get elected as governor, is going to be to unwind this mess. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that today. I feel like we are stuck in this broken cycle, and no matter who we elect, I align with a lot of the core values of our current legislature and our current and what is going on, but I'm surprised to find that I feel like we're just in this constant sort of broken cycle of legislation and governance and bigger government, we really got to ask ourselves as Wyoming residents, citizens of the United States, what we have been doing for decades working for education, taxes, healthcare, all of this. We've legislated ourselves, Eric, essentially to death. And I don't know that we know how to de-legislate ourselves. For those of you that maybe watched President Trump's address to the joint session of Congress just the other night, he said, I want 10 less regulations for every one that you make, right? He said that. And I'm looking at what we're even doing in Wyoming right now, and we're going the other direction. I mean, we started this session with over 800 bills, practically a Wyoming record. Now, granted, many of them didn't make it to the floor. Many of them died in committee, are dying in drawers right now. So we're not going to have 800 new pieces of legislation that come into law this year. But when we think about that, we're not unwinding anything. We're just moving it around. We're going to, you know what? Because of our principles, we're going to cut here. Oh, but because of our principles, we're going to add over here. And so what it's creating is just this endless loop. And so my question to Wyoming, to you, Eric, is what do we need to do? And what do I want to do to start unwinding this and truly lead? Truly, a leader is going to bring the education professionals of the state, along with the leaders in our legislature, together to the table and go, guys, this hasn't worked for decades. What are we going to do? Because if you want, like, for instance, if you want to keep public education, it's time. I'm just going to be really bold. It's time to gut the thing and start over. What we're doing is we're just making all of these new pieces of legislation to try to kind of fix it and move things around. And we know that long term, it's not going to actually solve the problem. And so for me, I'm more about addressing root causes than I am about, okay, let's throw another Band-Aid on issues that we have today, instead of really going, hey, let's take a minute and go, let's rip all these Band-Aids off and see how do we form an actual solution for something.
When you considered running for state of Wyoming governor, what first step do you envision as you talk about gutting the current system?
Systems and things like that.
What's step one?
I think step one is you bring the stakeholders, the people to the table that you need to bring to the table. So maybe, I will go ahead. Let's just use education as an example, since it's a hot topic right now on the legislative floor and at the Capitol. You bring educational leaders to the table. You have a conversation with them. You talk to them. Guys, because one of the things that I feel that we've done to our educators is we've legislated them to death. So the issues with our education is not our teachers on the ground floor. It's what we've handed to them through legislation, through the Department of Education, of course. Now, of course, the Trump administration's dealing with that, right, Eric? So we don't really know where a lot of that stuff is landing, where a lot of that stuff is ending up yet. But once we do, that would allow us to talk to the educators in this state and go, okay, we need to free them. We need to free education from legislation so that they can teach, so that they can get, reading, writing, and arithmetic. But that goes with every single issue in our state, in our nation. We're so polarized, Eric, that we're not bringing people together to the table to have meaningful conversation. Yes, we have committee. Yes, we have the floor. But we're not doing anything outside of that, really. We need a leader that will bring people to the table and say, you know what, let's duke this out, and let's do exactly what Trump did in front of the public. Let's have the conversation with the educators, the legislators, and let's have it in front of people in Wyoming so that we can either fix the thing, because right now, I feel like what we're doing right now is we're just breaking more pieces. At some point, we've got to either get rid of it or actually redo it. I had to do that with my own business in this last year, Eric. We've been hammered. My business has been hammered by technology. after 22 years of being in business, we had to sit down and go, you know what? We have to throw the entire thing out and start over. Or innovate or die was our motto in my business last year. We need to do the same thing with the issues in Wyoming. We're going to either innovate this or it's just time. It's just time, because decades of doing this has not improved our kids' test scores. But that goes for taxes and healthcare and everything else.
Staying
Yeah.
with education. Where do you stand with respect to your position on vouchers, funding following students
Yeah.
to whatever school they choose, be it homeschool, another private entity, or public school as we know it?
Well, Eric, I'm a homeschool dad. So, but I have a question for you. What has government loans done to higher education?
I think it's exploded it.
Raised the cost, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Raised the cost. So on paper, I love the idea. Wow, $7,000 a year is going to follow my kids in their education. You know, my wife and I have been looking at different forms of education from home that we'd like to do that are expensive. This is kind of an interesting exercise, Eric. If you Google average price for private education in Wyoming, Google returns $6,898. So I have to ask myself, is that how they came up with the $7,000 figure? But here's what's going to happen, and mark my words, supply and demand. We're a capitalistic society, right? And we love that. What's going to happen is, mark my words, these families that we're trying to help by giving them the $7,000 to put their kids in private school, well, that average cost of private school in Wyoming is going to go up. And mark my words, in a couple of years, it's going to be $10,000. So are we going to now give those families $10,000? In a couple of years, so they're going to now send their kids to private school. The first year is going to cost $7,000. Oh, that's going to be $8,500. That's going to be $10,000. And then that's going to be coming out of these. And the very families we're trying to help are going to get priced out again. Or we're going to say, okay, now we're going to write you a $10,000 check because that's the average cost of private school in Wyoming. I think it's a very slippery slope when you start inserting government funding. I realize it's our tax dollars. I understand that. I mean, my taxes have gone up tremendously on our place in Cheyenne. But then where does it end? Because all of a sudden I can afford this private school now, but in 2 years I probably can't afford it again. So
through COVID,
yeah,
I recall groups of 5, 6 families talking about their concerns about sending their youngster to public school and feeling more comfortable that perhaps it was really in year 2 of following COVID's introduction in 2020. So 2021, groups of families were considering that they could take, if they got 5,000 in credit, they could collaborate, and that would be a potential income for one teacher for 5 students.
Sure.
5-to-1 teacher-student ratio.
Yeah.
And the conversation wasn't exactly welcome in Albany County School District as by and large.
Yeah.
Whether it was even realistic, practical, the conversation really wasn't allowed to flourish. And I on the Talk Shop, big believer in give everyone the opportunity to come to the microphone in this platform, make it available for everybody so that there's not social isolation, disenfranchisement, and everybody has that opportunity. Do you feel that the conversations are being had openly? Do you feel like elected officials are listening, are open to listening, or responsive, or maybe just speak directly to you? Will you be?
Yeah, that's a great question, Eric. You know, I want to step back on that just a little bit first. I think we tend to put too much hope and trust in the people that we put in office. You know, we're never going to help and make everybody happy. I could be the most conservative candidate in the world. There will be conservatives in Wyoming that don't like what I think, right? And I think we put our hope and faith and trust in mere man too much, when we know that ultimately there will be people that might be my biggest fans, and there will be people that are also conservative that want to toss me out with the bathwater, right? And so, Eric, when it comes to your question about whether the legislature is listening or whether the governor is listening for that matter, I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. I think we have a lot of ideas. I think we're used to just legislating things instead of coming up with solutions. Kind of like I said earlier, you're going to probably hear me echo that. Um, it's interesting because I really want to talk to people across the aisle. I really want to have conversation with folks, real conversation, because guess what? There are a lot of things on the left that I just simply will never agree with. But what we're not doing is sitting down, bringing people to the table and say, you know what, let's have coffee. Let's talk to each other. Let's have a conversation. I want to hear what your concerns are, UW student, what your concerns are about, concealed carry in your college. Like, I want to hear what your concerns are. And when you exercise a little teeny tiny bit of human kindness and respect, you've gained an ally in someone that doesn't agree with you or someone that you won't agree with on the principle, just because you've given them an opportunity to at least be listened to and that someone cares about that. And so for me, a governor is not a governor for just the people who vote for them and put them in office. A governor represents every single person in Wyoming. And that means that every single person in Wyoming should be comfortable to walk in my office and say, Joseph, I'm concerned about this, or I've got this thing going on in my county or my city. And whether I agree or not, I will at least give them the time of day and listen. Give them the opportunity and give them that human kindness. It's pretty interesting because I've even had a couple of people, come out of me on social media already, like, you're a Christian, you're a Bible thumper, all of this stuff. But when I respond to them in kindness, they're like, I'm not used to that. And I think that that's something that we could bring back.
One of the campaign materials that you provided, the talk shop, speaks of faith, family, freedom, and future.
Mm-hmm.
That comes right out of what you just said in terms of faith, but kindness at the core treats each and every one of those. With respect to education, do you support a change with education in any particular way that you would recommend for our local and state education systems?
Yeah, so I'm actually putting out one-page solutions for every single thing that's issues for Wyoming, but that I'm campaigning on, stuff like that. And some people are going to look at that and go, you can't do this. It's too simple. It's too straightforward. I do actually have a couple of things that I could say about education. Let's start with that faith thing. I'm not Bible bashing or anything like that, but bringing values and morality back into our education. And what I mean by that is teaching our kids that stealing is wrong, that murdering is wrong. We've lost, just everything is sort of gray, and we don't have a lot of values left. And so I think bringing values left, but in a way that's educational and purposeful. I like the 10 Commandments, Eric, and I know there's a lot of different things going on across the country with that. I think Oklahoma's put it in their schools, and of course there's constitutional challenges and all this stuff going on. But let's face it, do not steal. Do you think it's a good idea, a good principle that we could teach our kids?
Agreed.
So without bringing like my religion, my faith in Christ directly into the classroom, I could teach kids not to steal. So bringing morals and values back. So that's important to me. But I think what's more important when we talk about education is by the way, Wyoming, we are guilty as charged because we have put ourselves in this situation. We've deferred so much responsibility to government, including educating our kids, that we aren't, as parents, truly teaching and educating our kids in these ways. I think the responsibility of education, reading, writing, arithmetic in the morning, and then interest-based learning in the afternoon. And that's what you do. And there's more to it than that. But I mean, that's what I would like to see. I mean, we're very proud of our numbers here in Wyoming. We're in the top of the nation, but still 50% of our kids can't read at grade level, right? So we still have a really big problem. So I think you focus on the core subjects, and then you teach kids all through school interest-based learning in the afternoons. What are they interested in? My son is brilliant when it comes to building and solving problems. So why does he got to learn Shakespeare? And I know educators might go, well, he needs to have that culture, and he can get that through his reading and his writing, but that he could focus on those gifts that he has. And every kid is different, and we put them in a box. And I know, how do you fix that? Because every kid truly is unique, and we require them to all have you got to meet this standard, but kids aren't standard. So yeah, I think it's a lot to unpack, Eric, in one interview.
No, sure.
But yeah,
Our first question comes from the audience.
Yeah.
The state of Wyoming Constitution speaks of as free as possible an education.
Yes.
And with, as they note, $26 billion in reserves in the coffers of the state of Wyoming alleged.
Yeah.
Why, or would you support, their question exactly, would you support free college education at Wyoming's only 4-year institution, the state of Wyoming, University of Wyoming?
That's a great question. We actually have, I think it's more like 30 billion in like over 600 different, state trust funds, Eric, that is sitting there. But I want people to understand something about that. Wyoming has lean times too. And so we need to not, empty out our coffers because we think we have ideas. Should university level education be free? Part of my education idea and plan is have most of your kids ready for workforce by the time they're out of high school, right? And then your doctors, your lawyers, those folks that need higher education can go and get that. I'm not sure, so then I would ask that person a question back. So do you want to get rid of property taxes? At the same time, like at some point you have to go, well, how are we going to fund education? How are we going to do that for free? I think there's ways to do that in Wyoming. Our tourism, our minerals, there are ways to do that. But I think you don't solve it overnight. I don't think we wake up and go, let's do free university. I think we could get there, Eric.
The Constitution asks for it. The Constitution calls for it.
Yeah.
But we've softened the language.
Yeah.
Saying our priorities are not free education for the state of Wyoming citizen.
Yeah.
As the Constitution calls for. In a sense, where it's convenient, we deviate from the language that's black and white.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because also with the Constitution, Eric, this bill giving the $7,000 to families is probably going to have a problem. It's going to end up in court because the way the Constitution is structured, this probably technically can't happen. So, in reviewing of the Wyoming Constitution, it's kind of surprising, you guys, everybody, like our freedoms in a lot of ways are kind of a facade. When you actually read the Constitution of Wyoming, or you look at the legislation that are the legislative burden on our shoulders, a lot of our freedoms are kind of facades. So we need to actually address that issue, Eric, because if we want free higher education, we have to, obviously there has to be a way to fund that. So we got to figure that out. Has nothing to do. I want to be cautious about talking about dipping into state reserves because you have to look at a bigger picture when it comes to state reserves. You can't just go, okay, we've got all this money. Let's just get rid of property taxes completely. Let's just fund all the counties and do that. And then all of a sudden we have a massive dip in energy prices or things like this, which we don't control in Wyoming affect us and go, oh, shoot, we're bankrupt now, right? So I think you have to be very responsible. That sounds like a lot of money, but when you look at like the cost to run the state, and then you go, oh, well, the cost to run all the counties and the cities and what goes on and all of that, that $30 billion actually disappears in a year or less if you're funding everything in the state. Granted, the state budget is not $30 billion, but you get my point on that.
I'm going to take this opportunity to move to a second audience question.
Yeah.
With respect to, as governor, would you make public studies of windmill blade disposal and get with the Department of Governmental Efficiency to stop subsidies to use Wyoming as a trash can for failed Green Deal initiatives?
Well, I think we already know that we're doing that, unfortunately, Eric, right? We're putting the windmill blades into old coal mines right now in Wyoming, and that is what we are doing.
That's right.
You know, I think that, Eric, when it comes to, you know, just sort of these unintended, well, or intended consequences of some of these green energy things, yeah, we have to figure that out. I mean, we've already denied the country's nuclear waste, right? We did that recently. We said, no, we're not taking the country's nuclear waste. But now we're taking these blades. You know, and I was actually out the Wyoming Outdoor Council meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about this, you know, and it's like, what other solution is there? You know, and I'm like, well, the only other solution for these blades is we put them on one of Elon Musk's rockets and we just launch them into space because they'll never go away. So I think when it comes to Green New Deal stuff, absolutely. It's not the direction we need to go. We need to support Wyoming's coal and oil and natural gas industries. We need to do that. We need to be open to future clean energy. We haven't figured it out yet, I don't think, you know, and the side effects, and like solar is great, wind is great, but we're not counting the cost with this stuff. Solar is highly toxic when you have to dispose of it, just like the electric car batteries are highly toxic. And now we've got all these windmill blades that you can't put them anywhere. You can't do anything with them. I think that's a broader discussion, even on the national level, to go, what are we going to do with this stuff? You know, is it, I guess, filling old coal mines right now? Is that's all we've got? Honestly, Eric, that's all we've got. Like, what else are we going to do with it? I mean, you know.
I want to go back to a point you made that Wyoming has rejected the idea of nuclear waste disposal within our borders. Mm-hmm. But yet we've said green light to nuclear power.
Yes, the Kimmer that's coming online in a couple of years. Yeah.
That conflict has to be mediated.
You know,
you can't bring it about and not plan for tomorrow's where it's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, you know, at some point, Eric, I think the discussion with the windmill blades, with the nuclear waste, it's a national discussion, I think. Because basically, right now, our nuclear waste is just sort of moving around the country, right? Whoever will take it, it's sitting in temporary places. You know, at some point, the music's going to have to be heard. Like, we're going to have to actually come up with a national level solution for what are we going to do with this stuff that we can't get rid of.
Does the science support nuclear waste containment actually happening safely?
We're making progress. I mean, technology is making progress in those areas, Eric. Especially
is it safe enough to be placed in proximity to Old Faithful and Yellowstone National Park?
Yeah, and the Tetons,
and give glow to our national.
You know, that's one of the 3 locations nationally that we've identified as a potentially like safe place to put nuclear waste. Of course, we've said no. It's not safe anywhere. Like I said, I think when you have to think about nuclear waste, it's like the only thing that comes to my mind is put it in a rocket and send it way out somewhere where it can't come back, because I don't know what else.
Not in my backyard.
Now, I will say this. There is technology. Our wonderful engineers and our people who are way smarter than me around the world are coming up ways to reuse some of this stuff, right? So it's recyclable, it's reusable, there's no waste. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet, Eric. But I think that a lot of this is kind of a national discussion. What do we do with this stuff? Yeah, windmills make a decent amount of power, but they have a shelf life. You know, so I think we just got to really get creative with it.
With respect, we've talked about education. We've talked about nuclear power. Mm-hmm. With respect to any issue,
yeah,
where do you stand with respect to local, federal, and state powers and their interactivity together?
I love that. You know what? So, most of us, we sit in our homes and we might have an HOA, right? That's our first governing body. Then we have the city, then we have the county, then we have the state, then we have the feds. We have this massive burden on us. I think when it comes to the balances of those things, I think we've gotten too far and too deep with it. I think about, we have the Second Amendment, for instance, Eric, right? The right to bear arms. Simple. But then we create more layers on the Second Amendment as it goes down into the city and the county and the state. And so, okay, yes, we have the Second Amendment, but we want to have all these things too. And we do that with absolutely everything, to the point where the populace is confused and has no idea what we're allowed and not allowed to do. It's very confusing.
Should the right to bear arms be infringed?
Never. It should just be that.
It's black and white.
So yeah, to me, it's black and white. So now we created gun-free zones, 1990. I was 11 years old. Yeah, 11 years old. Can I do math? No, 10, 11, 12. I was 11 years old in 1990. It was deemed unconstitutional 5 years later, but we never unwound it, right? So now we've had 30 years of people who have grown up in gun-free zones, who don't have the same acumen that was pre that date when it comes to firearms, management of firearms, things like that. We don't value life as much. We've got some modern day sort of things that we've got to deal with now, but it should be black and white, Eric. It really should be.
What's your response to the audience member for the talk shop that would contend thoughts and prayers are not enough? We need to take our children's lives to the utmost importance.
Yeah.
And we must stop these violent, tragic deaths that are occurring in schools and in public areas.
Eric, no matter what you do from a legislative or a legal standpoint, unfortunately, those evil people in our society, which we have them, let's be honest, there are people who will do evil things. And that being related to, something mental going on, something physical, it could be other mitigating factors. They're going to do those things regardless of what we do. Regardless. Okay? So let's get that out. Gun-free zones are soft targets. You create a soft target. Hi, I have a sign on my wall, and this is a soft target. Welcome. Okay? I understand the other side's concerns. I really, truly do. I understand what they're saying. But would I rather be in a room where someone could walk in and have a minute? Let's say campus security is a minute away. They could have a minute to fill that room with lead before, someone could come and intervene, Or would I rather be in a room full of students, if I'm teaching, whatever I'm doing, and the minute that happens, 6 people turn around and return fire? What's the better outcome? What's the better outcome? The evil people are going to do evil things, and we're not going to legislate that. No matter how many bills we sign, no matter how many rules we make. I mean, look at the historically gun-free cities across our nation. Highest levels of gun violence in the nation.
What's the role of government in the state of Wyoming?
The role of government, period, is to protect the nation, right? Our borders, to provide, I would say, probably provide infrastructure. That's an important part of the role of government. That's about it. But here's the thing, though, Eric. We have given all the responsibility over to government as people. So we got to look inside and go, if we, the people of Wyoming, want to take some of these responsibilities back, then we're going to have to go ahead and do that.
What's the top step needed by the public, the citizens, to take that control, as you suggest?
Demand that we stop treating symptoms for things. And we start treating the root problem. It's with everything, and I love our medical professionals. And this is a good analogy that we can use. I go in for a headache. Okay, here's a prescription. We're not going to figure out why I have a headache, right? It's not what we're going to do. It's not the culture we've created. Nothing against our folks in medicine, because honestly, myself and my entire family, we wouldn't even exist without modern medicine. we wouldn't be here. But we treat symptoms. And then at some point, my headache gets so bad, that my vision is blurry and I can't walk, right? And it's like, oh, hey, maybe we should give you a CAT scan or MRI, figure out what's going on. So that would be what I would say to the people of Wyoming. Demand that our legislature, our government, our governors, our commissions, our local governance stop treating symptoms and start getting to the root of the problem.
In a follow-up question, I want to invite everyone who's listening, tuning in at this time. We're visiting with Joseph Kibler for Wyoming governor in 2026. And here today in Studio 255 at the Laramie Plains Civic Center, we appreciate you joining us. The follow-up question is, are mental health establishments existing in Wyoming to handle the mental health aspect of those gun violence situations and scenarios? The transition comes from this audience member asking you to speak to mental health, and healthcare overall in Wyoming seems deficient in that per this audience member.
I would agree. I want to say this very as candidly but as carefully as I can, Eric. We have a mental health crisis in America. We are certainly short in Wyoming on support for that. But I think it goes deeper than that, Eric, because remember, I was just talking about root causes, right? I was just talking about why. If you look on my website, joseph4wy.com, that's joseph4wy.com, look under the issues page on kids and technology. Look under some of the root cause types of things that I address, Eric, on my website. Australia recently made it illegal for kids 16 years and younger to be on social media. Okay? There's a reason for that. This is destroying our kids' esteem. They're depressed because they're constantly enthralled in this perfect world that's on a screen. And they don't see that perfection in their lives. And so I think we have mental health issues because we're not addressing those root causes. And technology plays a part in that. Now, there's a place for technology in kids. I'm starting with the kids, but now let's talk about the adults too, right? Where we have these mental health crises, or the university students that are struggling with the fact that their university is no longer a gun-free zone. I think let's sit down and listen to them. I emailed the gal that organized the die-in at the Capitol. And just said, hey, you know what?
For those in our audience, this was in the state capitol building, the ground floor entry areas where individuals laid dead on the floor. That's symbolic protest.
Yeah, just to say, hey, this is how we feel about this. So for me, the kind of governor I would be is I would go down to that floor. I'd say, hi, guys. I want to talk to all of you. I want to hear you. I'd sit on those steps. And I would spend some time and hear what they had to say. And I think that is something that would help us bridge some of these challenges. The mental health issue, though, we need to look at the root causes. And some of that could be the over-medication of our kids, too. I mean, let's face it. I have an 11-year-old boy. He's wild. You might say he has ADD. He's an 11-year-old boy. This should be expected behavior. He'd rather be running around outside than sitting doing English literature. So I think it's a multifaceted thing. We are short on mental health professionals for sure. But that's a national issue. It's not just a state issue. But we need to as a people, not as a government. Okay, let's separate that. As a people, go, what are the root causes for this?
Mental health is an area in many areas of healthcare, frankly, are so deficient in Wyoming that you don't have to gut healthcare in Wyoming and restart. You can start. So this is really a fresh slate where you might immediately set to work. And what step would you take with respect to healthcare as you look to be governor?
You know what? Bold, big and bold. And here's what I mean by that. And I'm echoing this because this is really my campaign message. This is what I'm running on. when you go to the doctor's office, let's do the root cause. Let's figure out what's going on with you. It's very expensive. Healthcare is very expensive. We all know that. It's very, very expensive, and it's getting more expensive every day. Um, uh, let's say you go into the ER. Oh, you're having a little problem in your chest. Okay, well, we're going to do this, this, and this. So we do an X-ray. Oh, that doesn't show anything. Oh, you're still having the problem? Okay, let's do a CAT scan. Oh, okay, we'll do that. And then we go, oh, you're still having a problem? Okay, let's do an MRI. Right? Oh, MRI found the problem. Why don't we just go? Let's create a culture where let's get to the root of the problem. Let's heal people. Let's be in the business of healing. And again, I don't necessarily fault our healthcare providers. It's the system that we've given to them that have caused us to get away from that healing mindset, and let's just treat the symptom mindset.
Is the unarguable goal in so many cases ever truly absolutely solved? Is that even possible?
No, because as long as you have people involved, it's always going to be that way. I think that what we really need in Wyoming and across the country is we need people who are just regular folks, who really, really just can bring ideas from outside the box of politics. Because you know what? Even if I'm elected governor, I don't ever anticipate that I will operate like a politician. I'm here, I'm raw, I have no notes, Eric. I'm just speaking my mind. And that's how I will be as governor. Can I get it done? No. So let me tell you this. You can't unravel decades of legislation in 4 years as governor. Okay. So let's be realistic about that. But you can bring fresh ideas to the table that can help lead the people or lead the legislature, be a leader of the legislature, which is what you should do, and say, hey, guys, let's start unraveling this ball of wax, because we're going to get to the end of this legislative session, and all we've got is more layers of bureaucracy in different ways.
What would you say to the individual who says, not true, Joseph Kibler?
Oh, yeah.
You can do this inside 4 years. All you need is to present cause as justification for the action that would to work through each and every one of these aspects on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I love it. And I was thinking a lot about this, Eric, even as I was driving over here. Take taxes and tackle it, right?
Piece by piece.
Let's not work on 9,000 different pieces right now. Let's take taxes. Let's work on it. Everybody, let's tackle it. Let's get it done.
How do you eliminate distraction in your life?
You can't. Well, see, I have all my notifications turned off on my devices. That's how I eliminate distraction. But let me ask you this question, Eric. So you said, can we do it in 4 years? Well, I'm married. That's two people. Yeah, two people that try to get 100 people to agree to something, let alone two people, right? So I think that if you can present a strong enough case and vision for Wyoming, that you can get the people behind it. You can get the legislature behind it. But we got to start leading. And I think that maybe that's where we're really probably lacking the most right now, is strong leadership that's in front of the people. And I don't mean in front of the people in the sense of like unaccountable. What I mean is like that's doing this, that's just hanging out, just actually just doing this. And we're not doing stuff, behind closed doors, So I think, Eric, 4 years is tough. And I would say this, you know what? I'm going to use Trump as a scapegoat. He wasn't able to do much in his first 4 years, right? But his second 4 years, he's getting his vision done, right? I think for me, I have enough time to get that vision to the people of Wyoming that perhaps we could get buy-in from legislature and we could get some things done.
2 questions come from Cheyenne.
Yeah.
The first one is this. Is there any candidate who would run for governor which would cause you to suspend your campaign?
Great question. Great question. I know that there is rumors that our wonderful congresswoman might be potentially running. Right now, the answer to that is no. I thought a lot about that, and I felt, you know what? I will just say this boldly and out to the audience, Eric. This is a deep well in my heart to do this. And it's not something I just said, oh, this sounds like fun. Let's go ahead and do this. This is something that I feel is truly, you know what, that my life has prepared me for. And so at this time, I thought a lot about that question. The answer is no, not at this time. Yes, that's how I can answer that question.
Question 2 from same audience member in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Yeah.
Will you support specific candidates for state legislature, either directly or via a political action committee you control or influence?
I want to say this. I'm not someone that could be bought or sold by any committee or any flavor of Republican. Yes, obviously I'm a Republican. I'm a staunch conservative. Will I support people that align with my values and vision? Absolutely, 100%. But I will do that as a person, not as a committee, not as an action committee, nothing like that. I will say, Eric, you and I have spent time together. I think I'd really love to see you in this position in Wyoming government. I want to support you for that. So the answer is yes, I would do that. People that would support and align with my vision, but I wouldn't do it from a standpoint of politics. I would do it as a standpoint of being just a person.
From Pine Haven, Wyoming, the next question for you, Joseph Kibler, gubernatorial candidate for the state of Wyoming in the 2026 race.
Woohoo!
What do you see that's potentially available to expand revenue in our natural resource pool of assets in the state of Wyoming?
Yeah, I mean, energy and tourism, obviously we all know those are our two main resources for revenue.
Do we get all we can? I think the question from this Pine Haven resident.
Yeah, so the answer to that is no. We had the Biden administration, who we know, right, shut down energy in Wyoming significantly. And now, of course, we're in the process, federal government's in the process of unwinding that, but absolutely not. Especially in the area of rare earth minerals, which, as we all know, we've got an awful lot of exploration going on in Wyoming right now with the rare earth minerals. And so what a huge opportunity for Wyoming from an energy standpoint and from a mineral standpoint. But again, cutting through the red tape, Eric, kind of like what we're talking about. We don't want to just freaking destroy our planet, but there's a balance to that. It's hard to get anything done. Like Trump said in his speech the other night, it takes 10 years to get permission to do something. We got to stop that. We'll do whatever we can at the state level to do that. But remember, we've got to deal with the federal government on a lot of that too. I see, you guys, just to be honest, I would love to see, at the end of the day, we can get rid of property taxes in Wyoming. And you can truly, fully own that land that you live on. But it's a step-by-step process. And the way we get there is unleashing Wyoming energy. And I think a lot of folks currently are on board with that. Certainly our current governor and our current we want to unleash that energy out of Wyoming.
Nuclear storage can drive revenue. Nuclear storage can drive revenue by the billions annually.
It can.
Is there an expense that overrides that income potential?
Quite possibly, Eric.
Right.
Yes.
Second question comes from gosh, I lost the space. Hold on a second. I'm only human. All right, here we go. This question comes on another topic. As governor, would Joseph Kibler be interested in pardoning nonviolent offenders from Colorado who were extensively prosecuted on a case-by-case basis, of course? Example, when this audience member was 18, they were charged with a felony for 3 counts of driving without a license. Something they don't do anymore, according to this audience member.
Hopefully not.
But it's still on record from when it was a law.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I think what we would need to do there, Eric, is much. Again, I'm gonna go back to what Trump has done. He's put someone there to look at merit case by case basis. I understand doing stupid things in our youth. We've all done that. I think there are very few of us, either if you're watching online or if you're listening on the radio, have not done something stupid in our youth that's affecting your life. I think there's absolutely opportunity there, Eric, for second chances, of course. And that'll go back to my faith thing on my flyer there, Eric. I mean, we are given so many chances. I think absolutely there's opportunity for that. Absolutely. If, of course, it is within my power to do so.
I have to appreciate this question from Casper, Wyoming.
Yeah.
It's quite simple.
Yeah.
Greater than, less than symbols on this text, right?
Okay.
And this audience member would like to know states' rights versus federal rights. What say you on the greater than or less than?
I say neither.
Equal.
Personal rights.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We're a constitutional republic. I want to remind everybody of that. The Constitution of the constitutional republic is very different than a democracy. A democracy, more or less, is the rights of the collective, right? A constitutional republic is the rights of the individual. If I have to pick between states' rights and federal rights, my heart just goes to personal rights. I mean, my heart just goes to, we are under the protection and umbrella of the federal government as a state.
I'm going to assume one area of this audience member's question might be related to abortion and Roe v. Wade. If you take that perspective, where would Joseph Kibler stand on state rights versus federal rights?
And that could also go into state rights, absolutely. And here's why. The federal government could be a bully. Maybe not so much now, but it can be, right? It can be
maybe more now than ever.
And quite possibly. So having a spine to tell the Biden administration, no, you're not shutting down our energy. That could be a prime example.
Would you do the same with the Trump administration?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Trump administration has deferred some of those rights to the states, right? Such as abortion, right? So that has now become a state issue. But on that issue, and this is a real problem that I have in general, Eric, I've seen it happen across the nation, where the people of a state, we the people, have voted on something and said, no, we do not want abortion to be legal in Wyoming, by way of example. But then we get tied up, even though the people of Wyoming have spoken, have said that this is what they want. Marriage in California, they passed marriage between a man and a woman. The people of California, the most liberal state in the nation, passed marriage between a man and a woman twice, overwhelmingly. And then the judicial said, no, can't do it. Can't do it. So I think we need to respect the people, because guess what? The people are also suffering the consequences of those decisions.
In the 2025 Wyoming legislative actions, prescriptively, the legislature has denied abortions in the state of Wyoming.
Yes.
Would you have signed, not signed, or blatantly vetoed as governor? If you were governor today, what action would you have taken?
As governor, you have to represent the whole of Wyoming. I'm going to be really clear on this. First of all, I need to back up. Life begins at conception. Okay, so I'm going to be really, really clear about that. But I think it's really important that why are we continuing to legislate this when we've already got stuff in court, tied up in court on abortion like crazy right now in the state of Wyoming, right? And we don't know how those court cases are going to end up. Does wisdom
you do it in my estimation, you do it to be a leader in terms of what the desired tomorrow should look like.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, abortion is not an option, right? And I'm just very, very clear on that. I think the lack of, I think the how, we're just trying to find ways to get around it right now with legislation, which, as we know, has passed. The governor said he would veto it, and of course, they've gone ahead and overridden his veto, which they have the right to do that. But for me, when it comes to the issue, life is at conception. How we get there, well, right now we're tied up in court, Eric, with that. Okay, so it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way. I know right where I stand on life. That's not the issue. But right now we kind of have a double-edged sword because we got all this legislation from previous sessions tied up in court about abortion. Is it constitutional? Is it not? All of this stuff. But so now we're just putting more legislation that will likely just end up in court without an actual resolution. For me, abortion isn't an option. We support the folks that go through hard times. 99.9% of the time, it's two consenting adults and they take responsibility for their actions. You know, it's a tough spot to be in the governor's shoes, knowing the bigger picture of what's currently in courts and tied up. We all know Wyoming is a no abortion state. We know that. Like, end of story. You know, do we need to keep creating more legislation around it? I don't know, because we're waiting for actual decisions to be made in court, Eric. So I think it's a challenge, you know, on that issue.
In covering many topics, one audience member asks that we ask specifically.
Yeah.
Income tax, yes or no in the state of Wyoming?
That's easy, no.
Property tax, too high?
Oh.
Yes or no?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so with
absolutely yes or absolutely
yes,
no?
Too bhigh. Absolutely should not been allowed to get here. However, can I talk to the property tax thing just a second?
Please. This audience member was just simple and blatantly.
I love those
frank.
questions. Here is what we need to do with property taxes. We need to stop messing around with it. Let's start with an actual property tax solution, which is you pay tax on what you paid for your house. End of story. They stop messing around with it. If you bought your house 20 years ago and your taxes was $1,500, that's what you've paid for 20 years. And guess what? That's great. There's some argument whether the Constitution would support this as being fair and equal or not. However, if I buy my house for $1 million yesterday, I can afford it and I pay taxes on $1 million. End of story. That's step one on property tax. I think ultimate goal, you want to get rid of it. But the reason that people can't afford, you know, it's kind of funny you mentioned this. You know, my property taxes for my little family has gone up a couple of $100 a month. Guess what? It's not just people who are retired or veterans that are on a fixed income. My family lives on my income. When you talk about adding thousands of dollars of property tax to my little family, that affects our groceries. That affects our utilities. So the first thing you got to do is you got to kind of stop it. You just stop messing with it. Senate Bill 282 got really close to that. Of course, it did not make it through the floor this time. Senate Bill 282 got really close to people being taxed on a fixed value of your house. Because if you think about it, 6,000 or 8,000 homes or properties change hands every year in Wyoming, roughly. They are now paying higher taxes on those higher purchase prices. It does kind of balance out. Now, not in some of our depressed counties. They have a little bit different challenge out there, and I think we can find a way to help them so that they're not, you know, hurt too much. I think the ultimate goal has got to be to get rid of it, because then you really truly own your property. You're not paying rent to any government, but you can't do it overnight. I think it could be done with the right plan.
I'd like to go back to spring 2024 in respect to tax and the conversation. There were at least 8 initiatives that were brought up maybe during legislative session of 2024, but certainly soon after, through even a citizens petition effort.
Yes.
For a 50%
yes.
Tax reduction. And through this process, I can only think of one state citizen who spoke openly about their position on taxation in the state of Wyoming.
Mhm.
Is that remarkable to you that there wouldn't be every elected official weighing in on that very topic, or more directly, that there wouldn't have been an elected representative initiating legislation for each and every one of those citizen-minded pieces? For this to
Mhm.
have to go to a petition is greatly concerning to many in the Talk Shop audience.
Yeah, well, and it's difficult to do too, and kudos to the People's Initiative and all the work that was done
And it
there.
brought attention to something,
It
but
did.
take the muddy water effort of the 2025 legislature, and I'm not sure what the public will experience out of
Yeah.
this reduction.
Well,
Clarity doesn't seem widely shared. Here's one from a media standpoint.
Yeah.
I no longer get press releases that do this. I have registered for every
As have I.
press release
As have
that's
I.
available in
Yeah.
the state of Wyoming government.
Yeah.
I do so in the county government. I do so in the
Yes.
city government, so that I get each one of those things. You know that if roads close in the state of Wyoming, you no longer can get that news and information immediately. You
Mhm.
get it like everyone else via online,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you share it. So state of Wyoming doesn't utilize every asset available in the community to the public's best interest.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I had noticed that because I watched a lot of the legislative sessions, obviously, Eric. You know, you can't comment on any of the legislative sessions on social media. They have comments turned
Do
off.
we not want it?
They have comments.
Is it blatant? Is it
They
blatant
have-
message that the public
Yeah.
information, public comment is not wanted?
They have comments turned off on their YouTube channel so that you cannot comment together and have a conversation. Yes, you can comment on bills through the Wyoming legislature website.
Email your
I did. I did.
your representative, right?
Yes,
That's what
yes,
you get.
which
That's
you
the
can
option.
do, and most of us aren't hearing back from our representatives, and we know they're busy. I mean, these guys they're working hard. I'm not going to get into that, but you cannot comment on the YouTube feed.
And if you do force email comment or phone calls or verbally ask somebody directly, face-to-face interaction, you get an immediate answer.
Yeah,
You and I have that luxury here today on the Talk
Yes,
Shop.
yeah.
But when emails go and an elected official doesn't even respond
Yeah.
with an automated response in this day and age, is that acceptable or unacceptable?
No, it's not. In fact, I've heard a lot of people across the state of Wyoming struggling to get a hold of their representatives. There's a few representatives that are kind of shining right now in the communication area that are really keeping their communication with their constituents. But a lot of them are not. You know, and I think that's where the lack of sort of transparency or the feeling of the lack of transparency comes from. You know, we shouldn't be afraid. I'm not going to be afraid to talk about my tax policies, Eric. And I will talk to them about them until I'm as blue in the face as this bottle is that you get, this water bottle that you gave me. You know, because those are things that I need. We don't need to because here is the promise right now of the 25% break that we're all getting, or whatever it ends up being. The promise is that they will continue to mess with this for the rest of our lives. Every single year, there's going to be property tax. We're going to do this now. We're going to tweak this now. Now we're going to try this experiment with the Wyoming people. And what we're not going to see, because we're stuck in the loop, is a solution for property tax, which is you tax people on what they paid for their property, and then you make a plan that when we have revenue from minerals and energy, that we start phasing out property taxes. That's making a plan. That's not going, let's try 20, let's try 50%. By the way, kudos to the people behind the People's Initiative. They did something. It is so hard. You know, I think it's been like 25 years since the people of Wyoming have been able to get something on the ballot because it's so stinking hard to do. Our rules make it so that it is really hard to get the people to get enough signatures to get something on the ballot. It's hard. It's really hard.
In a two-party system,
Yeah.
it's very hard to get another party represented at all.
Well,
Is that healthy for
no,
America?
no, it's not. It's not. I mean,
Does the two-party system represent America?
I don't think it does, especially now when a lot of us are kind of tired of the two-party system. Even here in the state of Wyoming, it's very, very difficult to run as a third-party candidate. There's a lot of hoops you've got to jump through in order to run, as a third-party candidate. But these are the rules of our state. These are the laws of our state.
Is that not a change that can be made directly, promptly, in first 6 weeks of your administration in terms of those type of infrastructure opportunities for possibilities in the future?
You got to work with the Secretary of State's office. You got to work with the legislature to get all this stuff undone. And I think even from a political standpoint, I think it ought to be easy for someone like you or me to run for office. It shouldn't be difficult. And you know what? It's not super, super hard to run if you're running in a major party. But if you're running as just a human being, let's say, instead of going, you know what, I'm kind of sick of the two-party system, it's pretty hard to get in. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And, even now, there's some bills going through or that maybe even have passed, I haven't checked yet, that will make running for office in Wyoming just a teeny tiny bit harder for regular people who haven't made this a career, people who haven't, to where the election cycle is getting longer and longer and longer. And before you know it, guess what? I got to work to feed my family right now. I work for a living, and so
instead of running, I think you're speaking to, instead of a filing period in 2024 that spanned candidates filing between May 15th and May 31st, 2024, then the primary election being mid-August, and then the general election being November 6th.
Yeah.
You're looking at, per my understanding, an expanded, lengthened, broadened, political season, and might be in many ways interested in a longer primary election campaign period, because frankly, you get a core 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's very quick.
And it's ultimately so fast that it's tough to get the issues out. And I think awareness is really critical. And the situation where candidates don't respond was blatant to the Candidate Awareness Tour 2024, when every candidate is invited.
Yeah, to everything.
On air,
in
writing, every opportunity face to face, and yet the turnout was not 100%.
Yeah, well, I think, Eric, that you could do things of your own volition, like I'm doing now, right? I'm just deciding that that's what I'm doing, and I'm committed to a certain amount of events every week, but I got to work for a living. I got to take care of my family. I think the flip side of that, is it does become a career politician's sort of game when you start extending things out to where you're basically always running, where you've always got to be running. And that also affects your ability to get the job done.
Who are advocates for the change?
You know what? I'd have to look at the sponsors of the bill. I don't.
Are you?
No, I'm not, to be honest. And here's why. I think I kind of told you. It starts to become a class where, you know what? It's only the folks who have the pockets to do it that can run continuously, right, Eric? Where they can always be campaigning, they can always be running. And also as a result, that affects their ability to get things done, I think, too. While I also hear what you said, well, it'd be kind of nice because then they'd have more time to get around the state and stuff like that. I think the contrary to that is just, wow, we're always running for office and we have to, and so I think I think it's kind of a catch-22 with that bill. Because then, that's just extending things so much. And then, of course, runoffs, too. And there may be some pros to runoffs even, but again, we're already in an election cycle that never ends, right, Eric? So, you start adding months and months and months to it. It's like it just never ends. We never get a break.
Why did you choose to start your campaign 2 years in advance?
Because I knew that would be what it would take for someone who is running a grassroots campaign to make an impactful difference and shake enough hands and be able to have time to provide vision. But I'm not doing it full time. I've committed a certain amount of time every week to doing this. And then I'm working, I'm feeding my family, and I'm doing that. So I think for me, that's what I knew. And also I'm running grassroots, Eric. You'd be kind of hard pressed on my website. You can find it where you can donate to my campaign. But that's not my focus, because you know what? I want the people of Wyoming to love what I'm giving them enough to want to vote for me. Plain and simple. You know what? And they don't need, me to be spending $1 million of their dollars on mailers and things like that. Will there be a point where I probably need to do some of that stuff? Maybe, probably. But I've got media. I can use media, and that's basically free. It's just my time to show up and be here. And so I can use that. My intent, I'll be boots on the ground an awful lot in Southeast Wyoming here this year. I'm not really going to run a ton across the state this year. That'll be next year's task. We'll be running across the state right now to get interest and build.
So far in 23 counties, where have you made appearances in the state of Wyoming?
Man, I've only been doing this a month. Yeah, so just Laramie County mostly. Yeah, I made it to a few places.
Well, your reach out has made several counties in the state of Wyoming, because as we followed and prepared for today's interview, we recognize that you've done town halls online.
I am. So that's one
tell
thing.
People about that opportunity.
Folks
as an
that are
introduction to
watching,
you.
at least twice a month, I've got virtual town halls online. The next one coming up, I think I'm talking about taxes specifically. So that'll be a lot of fun. But then every month, I've got an Ask Me Anything town hall. So if you're from Wyoming and you want to show up, you can literally ask me anything. You know what? And you might ask me something that'll catch me off guard, and I'll give you a blank stare, or whatever. But because there's a lot of issues. But yeah, I'm really making myself available to all of Wyoming in a way that I think candidates haven't done. The other thing I've done is a lot of my Thursdays are set up as community days where I can do one-on-one meetings. I'll meet anyone in Southeast Wyoming one-on-one on Thursdays. But anyone in the state can connect with me, and I'll Zoom with them. I'll talk to them on a one-on-one basis. And that's my Thursdays. So I've got that on my calendar too. So I am available to folks.
In respect to your campaign materials, you put your cell phone number right out there.
I do.
307-640-5277.
Yeah.
And you invite texts or calls.
I do. Yeah. I just want to talk to people. Yeah.
And your email.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Simple. Joseph at Joseph4wy.com.
Yep.
Your domain.
Joseph.
4wy.com.
Yeah.
And there is a QR code available for more information, and there's obviously there's a campaign that in grassroots effort or any other requires support.
Yeah.
How does somebody get involved with your campaign, with you, find out about you? What's your favorite way for people to reach out and find Joseph Kibler?
They can call or text me. I mean, that's perfect. They can go on my website if they have a particular interest. They could go to my contact page on my website, and they can say, "Hey, Joseph, I'm interested in helping share your message on social media." Like they can do that. They can fill it out. I get that email and get it going. And right now, like my objective right now, I've got a bunch of folks that are super, super interested. I've got someone that's actually kind of stepped up as campaign manager already. And then I've got a bunch of folks right now. The biggest thing I could use help with from the audience that's listening, just share my content when I post it. Just share it with the community. If you're like, wow, Joseph makes a lot of sense on property taxes, post it in your Fremont County Facebook group. Post it in your Casper, group or whatever. Help me get the word out. I think that's the biggest thing right now. But I welcome ideas, information. I've got this little blue book that I don't think I brought it with me. It's my campaign book. And one of the things I wrote in there in the first page is like kind of the criteria for what I'm running. And that's always be teachable, tell the truth, don't get caught up in the online fights, and do these things. You know what, you guys, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not afraid to sit here and go, I don't have all the answers, but I want to hear from the people of Wyoming. So yeah, I'd love to hear from them. Yeah.
On behalf of the Talk Shop, I'd like to thank you, Joseph Kibler,
Yeah.
gubernatorial candidate for the state of Wyoming's governor position in 2026 elections. Thank you for joining the Talk Shop.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Most enjoy this opportunity to launch, frankly, the Candidate Awareness Tour 2026
Awesome.
on social media, and these interviews will be archived so that they may be shared indefinitely. I pride that 2022 interviews are still available, at least till the end of March, as Facebook has made a change in that practice. We're navigating alternate places to host those and archive those and make them available, because we're not into gotcha on the Talk Shop. We're into communication and conversation, and we have to ask ourselves the greatest question: do you or do you not show up and converse with the community? Because these are your friends, these are your neighbors, and these are people that you ask to vote for you. And we thank you. It goes without saying, the views and opinions expressed here are those of myself and guest today, Joseph Kibler, candidate for Wyoming governor, and not those of any of our show supporters and sponsors. And in that, we thank you again.
Thank you, everybody,
for making this program.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And we're out.